Good morning, everyone. We're just gonna wait a couple more minutes to see if more people are stopping by. But I'll go ahead and put the extra credit link in the chat now, and I'll also put it up later. Do you guys have midterms coming this week or next week? Oh, that's coming up. Do you guys feel ready for it? Oh, today. That's I hope it went well. Yeah, that's true. Just do your best. It'll be okay. Oh yeah, the life cycles. Also for those of you that are taking the exam on Monday, I have tutoring sessions this weekend. So if you want one-on-one tutoring sessions, feel free to sign up and we can work through individual topics together, or I can help answer specific questions. So definitely look into that. The comment says not ready after seeing the spreadsheet. Yeah, I feel like it does seem to be a lot of memorization. But today we'll see some key characteristics or patterns, so hopefully that'll make it a little bit easier to memorize. And for studying, what I like to do is do mind maps or like these type of spreadsheet. So when I look at it, I know which topic falls under what instead of like having to write everything out. So that like cuts down some time when it comes to note taking. Okay, let's get started. So today we're going to be looking at how the Invertebrate Phyla is. Comment says you're pretty quiet. Is it possible to have you move your mic closer? Okay, yeah, let me try that. Is it better now? Okay, so I'm gonna stop the stream and start it again, and oh, you can hear me fine? Okay. Um, then whoever, like, if you're having trouble hearing me, try adjusting on your end maybe, and maybe that'll make it a little bit better. And also, the video will be recorded, so you can also, when you're rewatching the video, you can adjust the volume from your computer as well. And yes, there is an attendance sheet for extra credit. I'm posting it right now, and I'll also post it at the end for other people that are coming in. But if people ask for the sheet, like if you guys can copy paste it in the chat again, that would be really helpful. It looks like people are having trouble filling out the worksheet, but it looks like other people are okay with it. Yeah, make sure you're logged into your PDX email. Maybe that'll help. But I don't think I did any restrictions on who can fill it out. The worksheet should be on D12, and I'm not sure if Professor Couts put it up this week, but I know Dr. Reddy did, so if someone would like to share that with people from Professor Couts' class, that would be really helpful. Okay, so today we're going to be filling out this worksheet, and we're going to be looking at major characteristics of the Invertebrate Phyla, and what we're going to be doing is looking at examples from each of these phyla and also talking about their tissue embryonic layer, like do they only have ectoderm or do they have all three? So we're going to be looking at that. And then we're going to be looking at their development, how they develop, and if they have a true muscle, and if they're symmetrical or not. Okay, so the first one, porifera, is already given to us, and that's going to be our sponges. So an example of organisms from porifera is sponges, and then Cenderia is our next one. Does anyone remember what types of organisms belong to the phyla Cenderia? Yes, great answer, jellyfish. So jellyfish is an example. Corals also fall under this phyla, and also hydra. So their number of embryonic tissue, they only have two. They only have an ectoderm and an endoderm. So that's important to note that they're not as complex as organisms with three layers. And they do not have a muscular cell. And then they're known to have radial symmetry. And another trait is that they don't move around a lot. They usually stick onto something, and the exception would be jellyfish. But if you think about corals and hydra, they're usually stuck to something. So we can say that most have a sessile life. And then for the jellyfish, or sorry, the sponges, for symmetrical, they're not symmetrical. So there is no real symmetry present. And they also have a sessile lifestyle. Okay, so the next type of, of phyla that we're going to be looking at is the Platyhelamentus. Do you guys have examples for what organisms fall under this category? Yes, great job. Flatworms. Flatworms fall under this. And the types you could think of are Planaria, flukes, and tapeworms. So these are the first phyla where we start seeing three layers during embryonic development. So whereas before like for sponges, they don't have any, and then for the Cenderia one, we see two, and this is going to be the first time that we're going to be seeing three layers. And those three are ectoderm, endoderm, and mesoderm. And this is important in in evolution because the presence of the mesoderm allows for the evolution of the circulatory system and the muscular system to have a true muscular system. So it gives a big advantage compared to the phylums that came before this. And in here, at the tissue level, we're going to be seeing the beginning of organs and reproductive system. So that's a key trait. And they do have a true muscle, and that's due to the mesoderm that's present. And these organisms are going to have bilateral symmetry, which is important to know that this is bilateral, whereas the Cenderia were radial symmetry. And these are going to have locomotion. So they tend to move around a lot from place to place and usually don't stay in one place for too long. Okay, the next is Nematoda, and here we're going to see roundworms. And an example of roundworms are horsehair and Ascaris worms. So these are types of roundworms. And then for the number of tissue layers in embryo, it's going to be the same as the last phyla. So they're also going to have 3. Here, instead of tissue level development, we're going to see organ level development. And we are going to see true muscle cells here, and they're going to be longitudinally arranged muscles only. And they are also going to have bilateral symmetry with locomotion. The next phyla is the Analytica, and these are going to be our earthworms and leeches. So the big category would be segmented worms. And I'm just going to start writing 3 for these because we know it's going to be ecto, endo, and mesoderm. So I'm going to write a 3, and that's going to tell us that they have all 3 of the layers. And they're also going to be organ level. And here their muscle arrangement's going to be a little different. So they're going to have longitudinal arrangement, but at the same time, they're also going to have circular muscles. And they're also going to have bilateral symmetry. So a trend that you can notice is that once you have bilateral symmetry, everything after that is going to have the bilateral symmetry because it's advantageous. So as we're going through like the next three columns, you're going to see that bilateral symmetry, like all of them are going to have it. And then same with the germ layer, like once you develop the three layer, like embryonic development layers, then every phyla that comes after that is gonna, or that's more advanced, is gonna contain that. After we've like fill out this worksheet, I'll like highlight the trend that we see, and hopefully that'll help you guys visualize it and make it easier to memorize. Okay, so the next phyla is Mollusca. Do you guys have examples for that? For organisms that fall under that? Yes, comment says snails. That's one of the right answers. That's a great example. Bivalves. And another example that I like are oysters and clams. Yes, that's true. Yeah, cephalopods would fall under these. Okay, so like I mentioned, they're also going to have three embryonic layers, like the number of tissue layers, and they also have organ level structure. But we are going to see an increased complexity of their muscular system. So we see intricate muscles that are different from just the longitudinal or the circular muscles. Okay, so for the next two columns, all of them are going to be the same answers as the previous phyla. So I'm going to write the examples and then I'll draw out the trend that we see. So for arthropods, there are insects, crabs, lobsters, crayfish, things with appendages, like joined appendages. And then the next one we see the Ecnodermata, and those are going to be our starfish, sea cucumbers, sea urchins, and sand dollars. Okay, so I'm gonna highlight where they form first. So the three, the three tissue layer in embryo develops here in the Platyhelamentus. And then after that, all the phyla that come after that are gonna have that trait. And then for organ level, this is the first time we're going to see organ level in the Nematoda, and all the ones after that are going to have organ level structure. Then let's see, bilateral symmetry happens here along with locomotion in the Platyhelminthus, and that's going to continue down. Okay, so hopefully this helps you visualize it a little bit more. So the four traits that we were looking at, you can see at what level it gets highly specialized and how it continues down after that. Any questions on this so far? Okay, I'm going to move to the next page and we're going to see more traits for the phyla. So when you're studying, it would be good if you could have both of these pages, so this page and the page that we're about to do, side by side, because it's going to continue other traits for animals in the same phyla. Question says, does it matter that in echinoderms that adults are radially symmetrical? Yeah, I think that's good to know. Yeah, that's a good point. I would know that fact. I can write it here too. Okay, so in this page, we're continuing to look at the same phyla, but we're just looking at more traits. So first we're looking at the column and periphery, which are the sponges, are not going to have any. And their digestive tract is going to be intracellular digestion. And then for the circulatory system, they're not going to have any circulatory system because they lack mesoderm. So sponges and other organisms in periphery lack mesoderm. So therefore, there's going to be no circulatory system. But how they move things around in their body is through primary diffusion. And since Very simple organisms, we're also not going to have a nervous system, but how they communicate is through B cell communication. Okay, next we're going to be looking at Cenderia, and they also don't have a colon. But they do, for the digestive tracts, they do have a gastrovascular cavity. So some extracellular digestions do occur, but we still have intracellular digestion present. And as for their circulatory system, they're going to have diffusion, and some are going to be facilitated through fluid movement in their gastrovascular cavity that we talked about. So they're used for digestion, but also when if they need to move things around, they also use the same tract. For their nervous system, they have something called a nerve net that they use to sense things around their environment. And then the next group, the Platyhelamentus, which are our worms, or flatworms, are also not going to have any colon, but their gastrovascular cavity is going to be more branched, so it's a little bit more advanced than just a straight tube that's like going through the organism. And as for their circulatory system, it's the same as the Cenderia. They're going to have diffusion, but they're also going to use their gastrovascular cavity to move things around. But their nervous system is a little different than the last phyla. So instead of a nerve net, they're going to have a ladder-like nervous system, and they're also going to have ganglions in nerve endings and in head ends. So the trend is we're seeing more specialization or differentiation of the circulatory system and the nervous system as we're moving along. Okay, and then for the Nematoda, we're gonna have a pseudocolon. So the gut isn't lined with the mesoderm, so it serves its purpose, but it's not a true colon. So we're gonna call that a pseudocolon. And that's because the gut isn't being lined with the mesoderm, which is what it usually is lined up with. And in this phyla is where we see our traditional digestive tract, where we see a one-way tract from the mouth to the anus. So the advantageous of this is that it's going to allow for more energy input, and it's going to allow for specialization along the tract, so food can be digested into their monomers, and you get more energy out of that. So this is the first time we're seeing a one-way tract. And for the circulatory system, we're going to start to see hydrostatic skeleton. So there's going to be diffusion and some facilitation of circulation via fluid movement. So we're actually seeing circulation through fluid. And we're also going to be seeing lateral nerve cords. And for the Anilidia, we're going to see a schizocolon that's going to be formed where the mesoderm splits. So we have schizocolon that's formed from mesoderm splitting. And for the digestive tract, what we're going to see is from this point on, it's going to be, oops. So we see a one-way tract from mouth to anus, and after this point, for all phyla after this, we're going to be seeing the same trend. But for the circulatory system, it's just going to keep getting more advanced and advanced. So what we see in this step is a closed circulatory system. And we're going to be seeing hearts, arteries, capillaries, and veins. And we see the lateral nerve cord here, but it's in increased complexity. And from this point on, for all the phyla, we're going to be seeing the same type of nervous system. They're all going to be increased complexity with lateral nerve cords. Okay, and then next we're going to go to Mollusca, and for these, the column forming is going to be the same until Arthropoda, but the Ecnodermata is going to be a little different. So what happens to them is they're going to have their anterior column that's going to be formed by like from their gut itself. So they're going to have little pockets coming out of their gut, and that's going to be how they form their column. Okay, back to the mollusca. So we're going to be looking at their circulatory system. So after this point, we pretty much have the same digestive tract throughout. We have the same nervous system throughout, but it's the circulatory system that's going to keep differing between these phyla. So for the mollusca, the circulatory system is going to have actually it kind of varies between organisms. So some species in the mollusca are going to have an open circulatory system, and some are going to have a closed circulatory system. So the things that would have a closed one would be octopus and squid, and then the other ones fall under the open circulatory system. Okay, and then for Arthropoda, all their species are gonna have an open circulatory system. We're not gonna find any closed circulatory systems here. And then our final phyla, the Ecnodermata, they're gonna have species with only closed circulatory system. So this is a chart for the phylas, and I would say it would be important to know the characteristics. So if they were to give you one of the phylas, it would be really beneficial to know what kind of digestive tract they have, circulatory, nervous system, and also the stuff we looked at in the earlier page with symmetry and embryonic tissue layer. And you can practice, I would say my study tip for this would be to, if you have this worksheet, I would print out another blank one, and as you're studying, like try to fill it out again, or even like quiz yourself using the same sheet, seeing if you can fill out what we've filled out today. Okay, next we're going to be answering some questions based off of these characteristics that we looked at. Okay, so first question is, what set of characteristics is shared by all of the invertebrate animal phyla in the chart? So do you guys have any guesses for what they share in common? Okay, so do you think all the animals that we looked at are multicellular or unicellular? Yeah, that's true. No spine. Since they're all invertebrates, they're gonna have no vertebrate column. Yeah, a bunch of spineless creatures. And yes. So they're all multicellular. And do you guys think that they're like, are they all autotrophs or are they all heterotrophs? So all the invertebrate animals that we looked at, yeah, that's the right answer. Heterotrophs, that's what I was looking for. All the invertebrate animals that we looked at in the phyla don't make their own food, so we're gonna classify them as heterotrophs. So I would say these three characteristics are important to remember. So if they ask you like this question, like what do they all share? These three answers would be great choices. I'm sorry for that super creepy emoji. It was supposed to be a smiley face. Yeah, I think when I tried doing a smiley face, the program like Twitch automatically makes it like a little bit creepy. But yeah, I got it that it was a smiley face. No worries. Okay, so the next question talks about what unique combination of characteristics define each of the invertebrate phyla as separate from the other phyla. So, so we need to compare the characteristics in the like given column that we just looked at and the ones that change from one column to the next are going to be key characteristics that separates the group. So for example, if we go back, I'm just going to go back really quickly. So here, we're seeing that for the porifera, we're seeing intracellular digestion. But then for the Cenderia, we're seeing gastrovascular cavity. So that would be a key characteristic from one phyla to another phyla because it differs from one phyla to another phyla. Whereas if we're comparing Nematoda to Anilida, then we can't say that their digestive tract is a key feature because it's the same between both of them. However, we can say that their circulatory system is a key difference. So the Nematoda was having diffusion and facilitation, whereas the other one has a closed circulatory system. So if during the exam or classwork activities, if they ask you like what are the key characteristics and they give you a chart like this, look for where they have different characteristics from one place to another place. And that'll and that indicates that that's the key characteristics. Okay, so I'm just gonna write down look for where traits differ from one column to another. Question says, would increased muscle complexity count for a key characteristics? Yeah, so it would depend on which two phyla you're comparing. So if they're asking you between Nematoda and Anilda, is increased muscle complexity a key characteristics, then you would say yes. because in the Nematoda, you don't have increased complexity, you have lateral nerve cords, so it is different that the Anilda has increased complexity. However, if they were to ask you if increased complexity is a key characteristic between the Mollusca and the Arthropoda, the answer would be no, because they both have the same increased complexity. So that's not a key difference between both of them. But I would say a safe bet is for the circulatory system, since they all have different types of circulatory system, except between the Cenderia and the Platyhelamentus. They're all different, so it seems that circulatory system tends to differ a lot. Okay. Next, it asks, if you compare the characteristics of one phylum of the invertebrates with the next, what key differences separate the group from each other? Um, so I feel like, one second, I think I got my questions confused. Okay, yeah, so what I was just talking about is for is for this question. Sorry for the confusion. So where I was talking about the key characteristics, that would be here. So you look at one trait and it differs from another column. Two is a little different because it's saying what combination of characteristics. That's the part that I missed. So it's asking for the combination of characteristics that makes one different from another. And for this, it's the same process, so you're looking at the same process, but you would look at more than one. So let's look at trying to decide which phyla we want to look at. Okay, so for example, let's look at Porifera and the Cenderia. So if they're asking for a combination of key characteristics, it's all of them because all of them are different. Their digestive tract is different between the phyla, their circulatory system is different between the two phyla, and the nervous system is between the two phyla. So for that, we would list off that Porifera has intracellular digestion, but Cenderia has a key characteristic where they have a gastrovascular cavity. So we would just list all of them because it's asking for a group of key characteristics. But if we were to look at the Mollusca and the Arthropoda, we see that their colon is the same, their digestive tract is the same between each of them. However, their circulatory system differs, but their nervous system is the same. So here we can say that this is the only key characteristic between them. And the important thing here to realize is that no phyla is exactly the same as the other one. Like even the Mollusca and the Arthropoda that we looked at, even though every single characteristics, at least on this page, the colon, digestive tract, and the nervous system, even though those are the same, we still have at least one difference in the circulatory system, and that's what warrants them to be in different phyla. So it's important to remember that like two phylas can't be the exact same. They're gonna have at least one key differences. So yeah, I'm going to write down no single characteristics defines each phyla. And I'm also going to write, and each phyla is unique and can't have all the same traits. Okay. So next, we're going to be looking across the columns and seeing what major trends appear to occur in each of the various organisms. And we already kind of did that when we were filling out the worksheet, but we can go over it again. So what that question is referring to is it's wanting us to not like completely memorize the worksheet for verbatim, but rather it's important for us to point out where key differences occur. So that would be the stuff that I highlighted. So it's important to note that the three tissue layer in embryo originally came or occurred in Platyhelminthus. So the phyla that came before that do not have that. So it's important to note that as a milestone. And then same for organ level. So first we have quasi-tissue level, then tissue level, and then we have a little bit of organs in the reproductive system. And then when we get to the nematoda is when we see complete organ levels and system occurring. And for the true muscles, the key thing to remember is the mollusca because they have the most complex muscles, and every phyla that came after that kept that form. And for symmetry, it's the bilateral symmetry and locomotion. So if they gave you a phyla that's before the Platyhelminthus, it's important that you know it's not bilateral. Like because it comes before Platyhelminthus, you should be able to realize that, oh, it should be something other than that, like radial symmetry or no symmetry at all. And then on the next page, the digestive tract and the nervous system, we see the similar pattern. So the digestive system has the most complex one in the nematoda. So we see a one-way tract from mouth to anus, and the phylas after that also have the one-way mouth tracts. And for the nervous system, it is the Annelida. And the colon is a little bit different because we have the Mollusca and the Arthropoda. Oh, let me highlight that too. So we have the Mesoderm splitting to form the colon. However, the Ecnodermata is a little bit different. So when you're studying off of this worksheet, I would pay close attention to the highlighted parts. So here I'm going to write, remember the major changes that were introduced. Let me also write down an example. So that would be, let's say the Platyhelminthus for the three layers. Okay. Okay, so the next part is, does this analysis provide evidence for or against the statement? Evolution adds on to or modifies what already exists. What do you guys think? I would like to hear your opinion about whether it provides evidence for or against that statement. So what I would say is that it does provide evidence for that statement, because when we look at the chart, we see that there's one trait that comes along, but then, oh, we have a comment. Let's see, mutation on an existing organisms that offer a comparative advantage in reaching reproductions or continued. Yes, that is a great answer. And I feel like that's why these modifications occur. So from the chart, we see that we have very simple traits, but then uh, we have something that can offer us an advantage, like the comment says, something that has advantage in reaching reproductions or continued. So an example of that is the mesoderm layer in Platyhelamentus. Before that, we didn't have that, but then we have the mesoderm, which gave rise to muscles and circulatory system, and that's going to allow for the organisms to get more nutrients, move around, and that offers advantage, right? So evolution is going to add on to or modifying what already exists. And we can also see that in the chart where each of the characteristics keep like building more complex because they offer more advantage. Okay, the next question is the chart organizes the major groups of animals based on grade or shared body plane features. What changes would need to make in this organism to reflect the possible phylogenetic relationship uncovered using molecular evidence? So here, since it's asking about molecular evidence, I would say I would look at like recent like DNA analysis that have been done, and what we found was that the nematodes and the arthropods should be grouped together as ecnozoa, um, because they say that it's listed among the deuterostoma and it like remain like it keeps the phyla along the same group. So I'm gonna write that down. We're almost out of time, so I'm gonna try to zoom through the last two questions. So sorry if I'm going really fast all of a sudden. Okay, so the next question's asking what developmental evidence was used to link Anildia, arthropods, and mollusca's evolutionary. And I would say that they're all protozomes, so developmentally they're all protozomes. They display spiral cleavage and they have, or when they develop the digestive tract, the blastophore becomes the mouth and the colon develops from split mesoderm. So that's what allows us to like group them together. And then for the next part, evidence is used to separate them. It's that the ecnoderms and the choroidates are deuterosomes, whereas, or they develop the digestive tract and then they form the mouth, secondary opening, and they're opposite. So the mouth and the anus are going to be opposite ends. And the last one is talking about in biological terms, a group of organisms are said to be successful if they represent a large number of species or if the mass of all organisms in the group is large. Given this definition of success, what major groups of animal would you argue is the most successful? So for this, answers will vary depending on like what criteria you choose. But if you like tried out this question on your own, you would think about like if you chose it based on the total mass of the organisms or the total number of organisms, and then you would give evidence for what evolutionary traits are going to help them be the most successful. Okay, so sorry that it went a little late and I had to rush at the end, but I'm gonna put the extra credit sheet again. And those of you that haven't filled it out, please fill it out to get extra credit. And I hope today was helpful, and good luck with midterms this week. Yep, no problem. Thank you. Thank you guys for coming. Yep, I can send the link again. Comment says, how do we sign up for your tutoring? So you can go on the Penji app, and when you click biology, it'll give tutor options. And if you click my name, it'll show my availability. So you just request through that. Thank you. Are the answers going to be posted on D2L? Yes, I believe so. I think Dr. Reddy posted answers for last week as well, so I suspect that she will post it for this week as well. I will email Professor Couts to ask if she's going to put up the answers. Actually, I think Professor Couts put it up last week too for the answers, so I would just check the D2L page for both classes and see if you guys are able to find the answers as well. All right, I'm gonna stop the stream, everyone, but if you need individual tutoring, feel free to sign up through Penji.